Good morning. You're watching Business World Live. I'm Jes Delos Santos. Let's go straight to our top story. Approved foreign direct investment pledges slumped to the worst level in 3 years in 2020. Data from the Philippine Statistics Authority show that FDI pledges approved by investment promotion agencies dropped by 71% to 112 billion pesos. This was the lowest amount since the 105.7 billion peso amount logged in 2017. The United States was the top source of FDI commitments with 35 billion pesos. It was followed by China with over 15 billion pesos and the United Kingdom with 13 billion pesos. Asian Institute of Management economist John Paulo Rivera said lower FDI pledges reflect investor confidence, taking into account the management of the COVID-19 pandemic. He said other countries may be more lucrative to invest in relative to the Philippines because of their pace in containing the health crisis and securing the vaccines. He said approved and actual FDIs will rebound once confidence in the country recovers. Rivera said this can be done by having a more stable post-pandemic recovery blueprint for the economy. All right, local shares on a trading break today as the country commemorates EDSA revolution. The PSCI yesterday tumbled back to 6,700 after edging lower by close to 0.9%. But one stock we still need to be keeping tabs on, BDO. That's yesterday afternoon. They did release their earnings figures with net income for full year 2020 dropping by 36% to 28.2 billion pesos. It's coming from a 44.2 billion peso base the year prior. This is a hike loan loss provision by 387% to 30.2 billion pesos, and expectations that soured loans would balloon due to the pandemic. Looking at some of their other figures here, net interest income, however, climbed by 12% to 133.7 billion pesos. Non-interest income, however, declining here to 8% to 55.2 billion pesos. Non-performing loan ratio hit 2.65%. That's a markup from just 1.2% in 2019. Operating expenses, though, were lower by 2.3% after it cut on marketing and volume-related spending. The lender says it is cautiously optimistic on a gradual upturn this year, that as it intends to unleash more digital products this year, like a QR-based ATM and merchant transactions. Prior to this release, BDO shares yesterday were lower by 1.71% to 100 pesos and 20 centavos. Let's see how this might color their performance as trading resumes tomorrow. But elsewhere in Asia, indices are already making headway, keeping track of gains seen in the U.S. over encouraging vaccine developments, specifically Johnson & Johnson's shots being safe and effective, also helping lift sentiment. You have some soothing language coming from Fed Chairman Jerome Powell on inflation, saying that the Fed is committed to easy policying, pushing back on inflation concerns. U.S. futures across the board here on the upside, both the Dow, S&P, and even the NASDAQ still making, at least a future, still making gains here. Closer to home, major countries in Asia starting the day in the green. Japanese shares already climbing beyond 8%. As you can see here, the Nikkei is up close to 1.7%. The Topics likewise is also on the positive territory, up by 1.4%. Korean stocks also outperforming here, up close to 2%, while Aussie shares also making advances here, up by close to 8% as well. Now, meanwhile, off to cryptocurrency with Bitcoin rebounding after purchases made by MicroStrategy and Square Inc. That helped temper investor concerns over fears that investors are starting to exit the digital asset. Bitcoin has been on a decline the past days, but jumped as much as 7% Wednesday to the 50,000 level. As you can see here now, Bitcoin now at 50,700 over here. Lots of concerns as well on Bitcoin. That's something that we are going to talk about with our guest. Okay, over here, like what I mentioned, Bitcoin also proving to be quite controversial as some users were logged out of their accounts on the Philippine Digital Asset Exchange or PDAX. To discuss that, we have on the show their CEO, Nichel Gaba. Good morning, Nichel.
Good morning, Jess.
All right, so first, give us an idea what happened here. How did unfunded transactions actually find their way into the platform? Can you give us an idea?
Sure. I guess to give a quick background, what happened to PDAX is something that's been happening across the cryptocurrency exchange industry for several months now. We've been seeing volumes that we've not seen before, and PDAX just received an unprecedented surge in activity that triggered a glitch, and the glitch resulted in an unfunded transaction or an unfunded order being placed on the exchange. Now, the thing to keep in mind here is that unfunded transactions or unfunded orders do not have the equivalent cryptocurrency or the equivalent cash delivered onto the exchange. And so a lot of the transactions that were matched with this unfunded order were in fact invalid transactions. And I understand that there's been a lot of frustration about that. PDAX immediately took action as soon as we detected this issue, and we've resolved the issue and improved the platform to make sure that we can handle greater levels of scale going forward.
Well, that also puts into question once again. Of course, there have always been security concerns over Bitcoin. How do you address that now, and what assurance are you giving investors?
Sure. So after a thorough investigation, we've identified that this is a glitch triggered by a massive amount of volume and unusually high levels of activity. We have no evidence of anything other than that, and it's something that we've already resolved, and we're now operating normally. All of our services are operating normally, even as we're reaching out to affected users who are still unable to log in. It's a very small portion of the user base that are unable to log in due to the remediation efforts and the reconciliation efforts.
So, sort of saying that everything now at least is back to normal operations.
Yes, so you can deposit cash, withdraw cash. You can place buy orders, sell orders. You can also place crypto and withdraw crypto.
But there are also investors who are thinking of taking legal action. What's your response to that?
We understand the frustration, first of all, right? Because we were down for 36 hours. People felt they lost trading opportunities because the market was down. Um, but this all this arose from an unfunded transaction that really needed to be resolved. Now, the Philippines has one of the best regulatory frameworks in the world, and we are working closely with our regulators to make sure that every step we take from the time that it happened on forward are in line with those regulatory frameworks and in accordance with the law.
Okay, and following that, you also have some language here from the Biden administration, particularly from Treasury Secretary Janet Yellen, saying that Bitcoin is an extremely inefficient way of conducting transactions. How do you think might this color sentiment over the cryptocurrency?
Well, Bitcoin itself has had numerous narratives over the past decade. People thought that it was the ideal form of money, but I think at this point, what is becoming quite clear is that a lot of the interest in Bitcoin is not in Bitcoin as a form of payment, but rather as a reserve currency or a scarce asset that can protect them in times of inflationary fears. So it's also interesting that you were giving an update earlier about the Fed's testimony, and I think what is pretty clear from that is until the U.S. reaches full employment, we can still expect the U.S. Fed to to be buying bonds and injecting liquidity into the market, which also supports the digital gold or the reserve currency use case for Bitcoin.
All right. Following that as well, we did see Bitcoin reaching new highs at 56,000, but has since dropped the past days. What's been driving that sell-off?
Right. So it has always Bitcoin has always been a volatile instrument. Anytime that there's a surge in prices or a spike in prices, there are profit takers. They're very much in the market. But I think what's important to note in this recent correction is that there was also a lot of fundamental buying that prevented a lower support level. So you mentioned earlier a couple of big companies buying on the dip, and we can expect to see that support level increases over time.
Okay. There are fears that investors are starting to exit the digital asset. Do you think that has any legs, that fear?
I think once a there's what's very clear about the cryptocurrency markets is that everyone's starting to express views. When before uh, people on the street would not have any idea what Bitcoin was. Now we know of Bitcoin and we can express a view. Somebody who has bought Bitcoin is likely to hold Bitcoin. This is what we're seeing both locally and also globally.
All right. And then at the same time, what's your outlook now for Bitcoin, at least in the near term?
In the near term, it will remain very volatile. It will remain very volatile because this narrative or this use case for Bitcoin as a reserve currency or as a means to protect wealth from inflation, this is all new, and we can expect that over the next few months, more and more companies, obviously companies require longer lead times to make decisions such as this. It is very likely that you can see more corporate or institutional interest in Bitcoin.
All right. At least more volatility up ahead, but still things looking at least optimistic from your end there. You have PDAX CEO Nichel Gaba. Thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.
Now, here are other headlines we're keeping our eyes on. The SEC has approved Aboitiz Power's bond offering and greenlit ACE Medical Center Palawan's IPO. The commission granted Aboitiz Power permission to issue fixed-rate bonds worth up to 30 billion pesos in one or more series in the next 3 years. The company plans to offer up to 4 billion pesos in PDAX-listed fixed-rate securities until 2026. The SEC also granted ACE Medical Center Palawan's registration for its 1 billion peso IPO, subject to additional requirements. Proceeds from the public fundraising will be used for 6 months' worth of working capital and for the purchase of medical equipment as well as for debt servicing. The BPO sector reports increased productivity in 2020 on the back of the adoption of remote work arrangements. That's according to IBPAP Chairman and Accenture Philippines Country Manager Manolito Tayag. Tayag said that they saw productivity rise by 15 to 40%, while absences declined by up to 40%. He added that attrition among BPO employees also declined, partly due to the lack of employment opportunities amid the pandemic. The sector also reported a cost reduction in retail and other expenses by 20% due to the work from home setup. That's why the IBPAP expects only a few companies to return to 100% office-based operation. However, the group also noted that the pandemic has amplified mental health concerns in the workforce. This led employers to initiate mental health campaigns as well as offer counseling sessions. The World Bank reports that most developing economies in the East Asia region, including the Philippines, have underperformed in terms of innovation adoption. That's on the back of limited information, weak capacity of companies, poor employee skills, and lack of government support. In its report entitled The Innovation Imperative for Developing East Asia, the global lender said 9 out of 10 East Asian economies innovate less than expected given their per capita income levels. The Philippines is grouped together with Cambodia, Indonesia, Laos, Malaysia, Mongolia, Myanmar, Thailand, and Vietnam. The World Bank says these countries must find new and more effective ways to increase productivity growth, progress from middle to high income status. And that's a first look into the business day this Thursday, February 25, 2021. Catch Business World Live again at 3:15 p.m. this afternoon. I'm Jes Delos Santos. We are One News.